Hello, hello. How you guys doing? Thank you guys for tuning in to yet another episode of Behind the Quota. We're very excited to be chatting with you guys today again. And we say with you guys because we feel like we've involved a lot of you folks with us and behind the journey of creating this podcast. So it's really just speaking to you guys, but we're really having the conversation with each other. And again, as always, a disclaimer that we're young professionals. We're not claiming that this advice is the advice that works. It's just experience that we've had, our opinions on certain topics, and what we think is best practice for us. Might not work for you, it might not work for your industry, it might not work for your line of work, but for us, it's treated us well, and perhaps maybe we learn other things that trump that thing that we're currently giving you advice on. So
we're constantly learning, we're constantly developing, and I think this podcast is just our journey going towards mastering sales or reaching a level that we're satisfied. But let's get started, Hassan. What's our topic for today?
Yeah, so the topic for today is actually a really interesting one. It's a fun one that a lot of folks have spoken about, which is the relationship between SDRs and account executives and the dynamic between them. What are the conflicts of interest? What are some things that SDRs can do to set up their AEs for success and vice versa? How are they best how are they best working together? And that's, I'd say, what the topic of conversation for today will be. But without further ado, Sherif, What is an SDR?
So an SDR or a BDR position is usually the entry-level position for sales in any organization. The main objective for an SDR or a BDR is to book meetings that end up resulting for the company selling its product or service. So they get like a base salary, and then they're paid on commission based on the amount of meetings they book, as well as the quality of meetings, depending on the organization. And they're really just assisting the account executive in starting the pipeline so that they can so that the AE can potentially then close the deal.
100%. Yes, they're really the pioneers of the top of funnel in a sales cycle that allow the account executives to have at-bats to try to close deals and make sure that the company is getting the revenue required to move forward and progress.
A good way to think of it also is like they're the frontline squad. They are the first.
They're the Cavaliers. They're the
first people the customer faces when like a new customer is being introduced to the company. The first person he's going to be talking to is a BDR or an SDR.
And whilst there is an element of sales involved with SDRs in terms of selling the meeting, they're not really selling the product just as of yet. They might be selling the product just on a surface level, enough to get them into the door, but not really enough for them to actually make that purchase just yet. And that's why a lot of organizations entrust new college graduates and people who are just starting their careers in sales to have that responsibility, because they're not really losing out much if an SDR doesn't book the meeting versus an account executive who might not be that well-versed. They might lose out on potential revenue, and that's more impactful to an organization than a missed out meeting.
Definitely. Like my recommendation, if I was to give one, is like the BDR role is it vets out people who are interested in sales from the people who aren't. So if you're thinking about getting into sales, the BDR position is perfect, because you will get all the experience you need in order to find out whether sales is for you or it isn't.
100%. And sometimes it's a really good indicator of if you feel like you have those traits that are required to be successful. And when we say traits, it's not things that you're already born with. Again, we've spoken about this in other episodes. You're not born as an extrovert or an introvert, and hence that's why you're going to be a good salesperson or not. But more so, do you have the ability to develop those traits, or are you receptive to those traits that you can learn them on the fly and you're willing to develop them as you progress into that role?
Absolutely. And the usual progression for an SDR and BDR role is you do it for a year to a year and a half. And if you are able to hit your quota consistently 100% or over throughout that time frame, that's when you become an account executive, which is the perfect opportunity for me to ask you now, Hassan, what is an account executive?
Yeah, so an account executive is, like you mentioned, the very next level after you get promoted from an SDR. And within each role, and then like let's say with SDRs, you have inbound and outbound SDRs, and there are different tiers you can call them. And same thing happens with account executives. There's different tiers, and the tiers with account executives come from the segments that they're selling into. So an organization would now entrust you to sell into a higher segment the more experienced you are. So when you first become an account executive, you're probably selling to startups or SMBs. And then once you've proven, your expertise and how well you sell and how well you can kind of drive a sales cycle, then they can now promote you into a mid-market account executive. And then once again, you get promoted into an enterprise account executive. And the stakes become higher and higher as you go up market. So whilst there is one word to explain account executives, there is different tiers of that. And that's the progression in terms of the career ladder you can expect in sales, basically.
And the salary ladder too. Like, of course, when you're selling to small businesses, you're still earning a really great amount of money. But once you get to that mid-market and enterprise level, that's when you're making marginally more. So that's what inspires account executives to still want more, because some people might think, oh, I'm an account executive now. That means I'm closing deals. What aspirations do I now have for my career? There's always that ladder to climb. You'd want to sell to mid-market. And once you get to that, you would want to sell to enterprise level.
And like we've explained before, a career in sales, first and foremost, is a career in personal development, because you're constantly developing yourself. Regardless, there's so much more to learn. You can't be a perfect salesperson. That does not exist. Even in very high level, strat account executives where they've probably known it all, you can still learn more and more. Because sometimes when you get to that level and get so ahead into your career that much, you forget about the foundational things you've learned earlier on that are maybe not as prominent now in your day-to-day role as it was back then when you were in SMB or mid-market.
Mm-hmm. No, totally agree. Okay, so Hassan, from your perspective, or from your day-to-day work, how important is an SDR to you, and what do you need SDRs for?
Yeah, SDRs are extremely important, right? Especially where so I've worked in organizations where you don't have an SDR working with you as an account executive, and you are the sole person responsible for prospecting and booking yourself meetings. And I've worked which is in my current company, where you're not expected at all to have to book or prospect your own meetings, and you have that privilege of having an SDR team. Even in the account executive segment I'm in, which is a SMB account executive. And they're very, very important, because I would say without...
And that's unique, right? Sorry to interrupt you. That's unique, because most organizations, I feel from my research, an account executive has to do some level of outreach, right?
Yeah. So most organizations actually encourage account executives to do to do as much prospecting as they can without jeopardizing their deals and their cycles and closing accounts. And most account executives just zone out. They're like, I'm not prospecting. There's no way I'm going to do that. That's way beyond me. I'm overqualified for this, right? But the good ones actually do continue prospect, and some organizations expect that from them. And there's another KPI of self-prospected opportunities that you've closed. But in my organization, it's actually our motto to say that we free smart people to work on hard things. And running a sales cycle is much harder, in our opinion, than it is to prospect and book a meeting. And that's not to throw shade on what an SDR does, but there's just much higher stakes in closing a deal than booking a meeting. And so it's not...
Maybe harder isn't the right word.
Yeah.
It's just a different task.
It's more important to the organization to bring in more revenue than bring in more top of funnel, even though they go hand in hand.
Of course, yeah. And maybe it requires different skills for sure.
It definitely does require different skills. And it's just, you need a more experienced salesperson to close a deal, like we've mentioned earlier, than you need for booking a meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's like, let me throw my well-skilled troops not in the front lines where they might get hit from the archers, then and keep them on the back line or something like that, right? So that's kind of how that works.
Okay, interesting. I guess a question I have to you then: what is
the importance?
What is the importance?
Yes,
to them? Yeah.
Sorry, I know we went a little bit astray there, but the importance of an SDR to me is quite a lot, because it saves me a lot of time that I would have had to put in to pick up the phone and call and book those meetings and vet those accounts and do the due diligence and scrubbing and prospecting I need to do to make sure that I'm getting the highest quality at bats every single day. So it's very, very important. And, I'm always very thankful and grateful for those SDRs. But again, we'll get to this conversation later where there becomes a lot of conflict of interest where we're combating and we're clashing in opinions. But again, I don't want to get too ahead of the conversation of what we're going to be speaking on later on today. But that's what I would say. That's the importance of an SDR to me. Now, I'll flip the question to you. What is the importance of an account executive to you as an SDR doing your day-to-day?
For me, it's really important for multiple reasons. The first reason is they take in the meeting that I book. And so they kind of have a very big influence as to what my commission check looks like at the end of the month, because they have to approve the meeting. They have to approve that it's like a qualified opportunity, which basically means that I booked them a good enough meeting where there is a viable seller in the company and a viable ICP in the person that they're talking to.
So you guys are checking out the BANT framework, the budget, authority, need, and timeline. And if you guys check those things out, then that's a qualified meeting you've booked, and that's how you get paid?
Exactly, yeah. So for a bit of reference, in my current role, I sell to like IT executives, so CIOs, VPs of IT, VP of security, things like that. So those are kind of the ICP that I look at, and those are the people that I'm trying to get into a meeting with my account executive. Now, if I go in and try to book a meeting with a systems analyst or an office administrator, it might work in my favor. Like it's on the books, it's a meeting booked, but for the account executive, that is an awful meeting because that's not a decision maker. That's not someone that can that won't count as a qualified opportunity.
Okay, so an account executive is ultimately the gatekeeper to you getting paid or not, or not getting paid, kind of thing.
In a way, yeah. Of course. Like you can get into like more debatable discussions sometimes if I feel like, oh, I booked a very good qualified person and they say, oh, perhaps maybe not, then we can start to clash here.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves in terms of the conflict of interest, because that is a very big topic we want to talk about. And I think it's probably the juiciest topic we want to discuss. But I guess in terms of an importance, is there a lot of weight on the account executives you work with? Do you care about what kind of account executive you work with? I know usually account executives are much more experienced than SDRs. Do you have your reservations on, oh, I think this account executive may have ran this meeting not the best way because this could have been a closed a closed deal or a opportunity that could have progressed, but they didn't put in that work?
Absolutely. Because my commission check doesn't just consist of me booking the meetings. I also get something called, I get paid on commission on influenced earning, which basically means that the opportunity or the meeting that I booked resulted into money for the business. It resulted in a closed deal and I get a certain percentage of that closed deal. So it is in absolutely my favor for me to care about the account executive having a good meeting.
Okay.
Because having a good meeting means there's a greater chance of the deal progressing, a greater chance of the deal closing at the end, and then a higher commission check for me.
Okay. And is it also important from a coaching perspective? Because I know, for example, you're ambitious SDR that wants to get promoted to becoming an account executive. Do you feel like you care about the coaching aspect of it and learning from them, or is that just way beyond you? You don't really care about it at that point in time?
No, I care about it, but I don't have that much of a high emphasis on it. Like I'm lucky right now where the account executive that I'm working with, she was in the same exact shoes that I was a year ago. So she was a BDR promoted to account executive and she graduated from the same university as me. And we just see eye to eye on so many situations. So I'm able to just ask her for advice and take her opinion on a lot of things. Like when I'm outreaching, hey, do you think like this is the right message? Do you think if I cold call him and talk about this instead of that, is that better? So I get a lot of advice from her and coaching. But to be honest with you, the other account executive that I work with is not the same scenario at all. He got hired as an account executive and I don't really feel like there's that much of a change. I feel like I get already enough coaching from my BDR manager and the other BDRs on the floor than I do from my account executive. So that aspect it's really not that important for me.
But do you feel as a SDR, you care about perfecting your craft as an SDR? Or do you care more so about how do I get from an SDR to an AE as fast as possible and get a head start on learning how to become a good account executive?
I'm absolutely the second option. I want to become an account executive as quickly as possible. And I said that to both of my account executives in our first one-on-ones. I'm like, this is just a stepping stone position for me to become an account executive. But I will say though, not everyone is like me. There are so many people on the floor that are here to like, either I want to vet out sales, I want to see if I like this or not. And they're also like fresh graduates. Or they're like, this is the role that I'm going to be in for a year and a half, 2 years. So let me try to get good at it as quickly as possible. And they really just think about like the next commission check more than they do about thinking long-term down the line. I want to be at a stage where I'm closing deals. So I am always like, if sometimes I'll sit in on meetings in order to see how they're selling and how they're talking to the customer, and what are their talking points, what things can I grab from them in order to use in my outreach for other clients. So I'm grateful that they allow me that opportunity, but also I feel like I can get that practice somewhere else. But it's useful. It's useful to ask them for advice. Yeah.
And I would also say there's something you've missed there. Sometimes there are folks who want to perfect their craft as an SDR because their goal is not even to become an account executive. Rather, they'd rather become a SDR manager and then break into leadership that route and then constantly, climb the ranks. Because I know people who have progressed from an SDR to the CRO role just through that route rather than becoming an independent contributor and an account executive. So if you guys want to become a CRO one day, you can absolutely do it without becoming an account executive. Just through SDR, then SDR manager, SDR director, VP of SDR, and then hopefully in a CRO at some point in time. Of course, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of experience. But that is a route that you can take if that is something that you guys are wanting to do. So by no means are you thinking SDR to account executives is the only route I can take.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like one of the SDR managers on the floor right now in the company that I work for was an SDR a year and a half ago. So it is extremely possible to go from SDR and then think about becoming an SDR manager and then jumping into the leadership route. It really depends on your goals as an individual. Are you favoring leadership roles over just regular sales roles? Because once you become an SDR manager, you're really selling less and you're more just leading.
Managing.
You're leading and managing SDRs.
100%. And it takes a different kind of person to manage a team of SDRs, because especially as an SDR manager, you're not managing experienced individuals. You're most of the time managing people who have just career shifted or freshly graduated students, people who are just early on in their careers. So I've had SDR managers who've hated their job as an SDR manager because they feel like they're managing kids a lot of time.
I was actually going to give you this analogy. I think it's the perfect analogy for this. It's kind of like being the manager of a youth sports team. So if we think of Manchester United as a soccer team, the SDR manager is kind of like the head of the youth system.
Yeah.
Where he's coaching the young talent that's hopefully one day going to become a first team player.
Yeah. And actually, one of the most disliked things, from my opinion, about the fact that it's the youth, and again, it's necessary. You can't look beyond that. There's no such thing as a forever SDR. Is the fact that an SDR joins the organization as a freshly graduate, and then he gets trained by his SDR manager, gets mentored by the account executives, gets coached, and now finally they're performing at an insane level. And we're so happy because they're throwing us the best at-bats and we're getting the best shots going, and then they get promoted. And now it's like, all right, it's another cycle. You need to figure out, okay, how do I coach this guy? How do I train this new hire that this is how he should vet meetings and book meetings and scrub accounts and prospect? And it's like a repeat. You'll never get to a point where, all right, I have perfected this SDR and he's now going to be an absolute machine forever. There's no such thing. And that's the only thing I would say sucks about the fact that this is quote unquote the youth program. And the fact that it's inevitable that they're going to get promoted within a year and a half if they're performing.
No, I totally agree with you. I think we touched on this a bit earlier. Like the skills that are needed for the two different roles are just there. You need different skills for each role, and just because you're really good at SDR doesn't mean you're going to become like an insane account executive. I've heard so many stories from my managers of that not being the case. I've actually heard stories of people that have got promoted to they were insane SDRs, got promoted to account executives, they were just awful account executives, and they took a step back in order to make more money, actually.
And you can also do something different to SDR manager or account executive route. You can also go through the route of account management, customer success, recruiting, because recruiting has an aspect of sales that a lot of people overlook, because you're still selling the role, you're selling the company to that applicant in a very indirect way, right? It just doesn't seem as salesy because, oh, well, you're giving me the opportunity to earn money. It's like you're doing me a favor, but it's really selling as well. And then account management is more of a nurturing role where there is opportunities for upsell every now and then because you're measured on retention. So just to kind of break that down a little bit more, with account management, the whole goal is to make sure that that customer that's just signed up stays a customer for as long as possible. And whenever some other needs come up that you can perhaps upsell on, you can upsell and earn a little bit of extra commission and extra cash there as well. So that's account management. Customer success, sometimes it's hand in hand. Some organizations call customer success account management, and some others call it other things. But it's really more so it's less focused on upselling and more focused on retention. And I'd say it's specializing in mostly retention, and that's what customer success is. And those are all different routes you can take from becoming an SDR.
Yeah, no, the opportunities are endless, I think, from an SDR. I think it's just a good starting position for a corporate career. You learn so much. I feel like I saw this post the other day. It's like an MBA course, but like more rugged, more like, you really are just on the front line. And you see everything, I feel, in the SDR role. You get told to F off a lot. You get
bullied a lot, because it's a lot of people do not respect the fresh graduate. It's like hazing, I'd say, when you're joining Greek life. If you guys are watching this and familiar with Greek life, it's like hazing. These are new pledges that are just joined. I feel like sometimes it comes across like that, where they haven't earned their stripes yet. They haven't earned the respect required unless they're hitting their numbers. And so
you're not gonna get bullied, by the way. I feel like this is an over exaggeration.
Not bullied, but you're not gonna get patted on the back immediately upon entering. You're really like, okay, I'll only give you flowers when you deserve them, kind of thing. Versus an account executive, if you, let's say, are an external hire that's coming to an organization, you're still respected because you've earned those stripes elsewhere. It's just now you've just transferred to this organization here.
But you have way higher expectations. Like you're like, okay, like, buddy, you've done all this great success. Let's see if you can do it here too. I think it's maybe you see it that way because you're an AE now, but I see it as like SDR role. It's like, oh, whatever. Like this kid's gonna come and he's gonna make mistakes, and it's just fine. Like, how many SDR out of a class of 10, maybe 2 will become account executive. So it's fine. Some will just make mistakes and they'll fail at the job. But I feel like with the account executive, it's like from day one, or like maybe after a couple months, it's like, all right, show us the results.
Yeah, what's up? What's going on here?
Exactly.
No, 100%. And there's much more expectation. It's much stressful. And that's why a lot of people can't handle that stress because, all right, you're under evaluation, you're being expected to close deals, you're being expected to do X, Y, and Z, and if you're not, then there's an issue, and there's gonna be a stop loss at some point that's in place. Okay, if you've not done anything in the next couple months, we'd rather move on and take the loss now rather than continue investing time and effort and training into you, and you're still not performing at the level that is expected off of you.
And I'm sure you can touch a bit more on this. Sometimes like you can be hitting your metrics as an account executive. You can be trying everything, but just maybe luck isn't on your favor and you aren't closing deals.
No, I think a lot of people think there's a lot of luck involved in sales. And whilst there is, my biggest thing is if you show up every day, when luck comes around, you'll find it. So whilst true, there is a lot of unfortunate circumstances that might happen that might get in your way of performing, like in terms of seasonality, in terms of territories, in terms of just things happening from a geopolitical standpoint. Sure, these can affect your success. But again, if you're showing up every single day, you're going to come across those stragglers that just are hidden blessings.
No, absolutely. But the point I was trying to touch on is like self-doubt can start to creep in, even if you were a high-performing account executive. If you go a couple months and you recently just got hired and you're having like a very good base salary, things like that, if maybe you're not hitting your goals early on, even despite the fact that you're hitting all your other targets, I'm just playing on that mental aspect. Self-doubt can creep in. You can start to not believe in yourself as much.
Self-doubt 100% would creep in, and you start doubting whether this is the correct choice you've made into kind of breaking in. But again, those are the signals of vetting out whether this is for you or not. Because it is to be expected that sometimes things are not going to go your way. But are you going to take it to the chin and keep pushing and persevering? Or are you going to say, all right, I'm calling it a day, and my stop loss didn't need it to go too much down for me to exit, right? So it's a different kind of mentality. And again, these are circumstances that are going to happen, inevitable. And you should see how you react, or if you're going to maybe toughen up yourself. Maybe you didn't start off as a very mentally strong person, but then you've developed that. These are things that you're going to go through regardless. It just depends on how you react to them and how that shapes you as a person, not just sales. Again, a career in sales is a career in personal development. All right, so now for the actual fun part of this episode. Wait, so fix it before I started. Okay. And now for the actual fun part of this episode, where we talk about the conflict of interest and where SDRs and account executives don't see eye to eye. Because these two roles are the ones that are collaborating with each other the most. Think of it like this, you're the person who's throwing the ball and the other person is batting. So if you're throwing the ball to me in a very bad way, it's a bad throw. And this is a very surface level analogy, but there's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of conflict of interest, and it stems from the aspect of how the SDR gets paid. The SDR gets paid if I, as an account executive, take the meeting and deem it to be a qualified opportunity that I can now go ahead and progress into the next step into the sales cycle. Then and only then would you get paid as an SDR.
Unless I disagree.
Unless you disagree.
Unless I disagree and be like, Hassan, no, I booked you a very good meeting. You just did a bad job at converting it, or you did a bad job at discovery questions. So it ended up being a bad meeting because of your lack of competence in that meeting.
Exactly. And that's where an account executive now hears that and goes like, excuse me, I'm in the position I'm in right now because of what I did to get here. You cannot tell me how to do my job. And also the second thing that comes up as well is gray areas where, technically the customer was open to taking a follow-up call, but he said to follow up with him in a couple months rather than book it from now. It's like, well, if he was a serious buyer, then he would have been open to booking that right now.
There are so many scenarios.
There's
like
so many.
If you guys want to see like office tea, like real office beef, like go on an SDR floor or an AE floor and hear what they each say about each other, because things can get like
very
nasty very quickly sometimes.
Very nasty. And I have stories for days about this stuff, because SDRs either come bug us as account executives and tell us, can you please convert this opportunity to the next step? Or they ask you questions that are obvious what the motivations are for. They're like, how did that meeting go? And I know damn well they don't care how that meeting
so
went.
Bad.
I don't know. It's not even, I know damn well they don't care about how well that meeting went. All they care about is, are you going to convert it or not? But in a very respectful way. And like, it's just like irritating. Let me just do my job. If it's a good opportunity and you deserve this conversion, then I'll convert it. No issue. I'm not going to not convert it because I perhaps dislike you as a person. That's not something that I would do, because in the end of the day, if I'm closing this deal, I want to close this deal.
But they want to know also. Like they want to know, like they should know, because at the end of the day, I know we made this clear, but I want to make it even more clear again, one more time. An SDR gets paid 99% of the time in all companies based on how many meetings they book. So if their quota is to hit book 8 meetings a month, they hit 16, that's them hitting like 200% of their quota. That's them making double the amount of money they would make. An AE gets paid their commission checks based on how many deals they close. So they're given like, you need to close 50,000 a month, you need to close 100,000 a month, and that's their target. So that's where the conflict of interest happens.
Yeah. And I agree in terms of the fact that maybe I should put my shoes in an SDR and say, all right, maybe they don't earn as much money and every meeting matters to them. Cool. I get that. But I feel like an SDR sometimes lacks the ability to put themselves in my shoes as an account executive, where it's like, come on, like you want me to jeopardize my KPIs and be, perhaps a couple percentages off from beating someone else in terms of a promotion because you now want to get paid under my expense of losing out on X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of conflict there where otherwise every single account executive will just convert every deal for the sake of letting the SDR getting paid.
No, I think that most issues arise is because they don't put the person doesn't put themselves in the other person's shoe. Like the SDR is not seeing it from an account executive's perspective, or the account executive is not seeing it from a BDR perspective. And like, that's, in my opinion, that's like where all the issues come from, is that the lack of understanding between each other. Like I feel when we started this conversation, you were so like, I wouldn't say like hateful towards BDRs, definitely not hateful, but you're like almost attacking like, hey. But now that I've showed you a perspective, I feel like you've softened up a bit.
I've always understood the perspective of an SDR and a BDR. And I've especially recently, I'm not going to share the story because it's like an active situation that's happened at work, but there's been multiple different issues that have went on about SDRs and them wanting you to flip things that are not supposed to be flipped or converted just for the sake of them getting recognized or them hitting their quota or them, getting paid, which I understand. That's how they get paid. But I'm not putting myself in a loss from a KPI standpoint for the sake of you getting paid, because every man is looking out for themselves the same way you're looking out for yourselves. I'm also looking out for myself as well. And that's where a lot of people, like you said, there is disconnect.
But I feel like that disconnect can somehow be turned positively in a way where I rub your back, you rub mine kind of situations. And what I mean by that is, for example, the moment that I got hired, one of the account executives that I work with, she had already booked 2 meetings, but she was like, hey, congrats on making it to the role. I'm going to put these in your name. And she's doing that. Maybe that will damage her KPIs a little bit. Like it will show up that I booked those meetings when actually she did. So her
prospected meetings are less,
which she actually gets measured on those. But from her perspective, if I get to like work well with this guy, he at some point he's gonna come in my favor. He's gonna either like put in an extra hour after work to like prospect for a company that I'm trying to break into, or he's gonna work really hard to get someone that I've been trying to get on the phone but I couldn't. So it can play in their favor, in both parties' favors, if they're willing to work together and almost support each other in times of need.
Cool story. I like that story. However, I don't like the aspect of I'm going to rub your back, you rub mine kind of thing with SDRs and AEs specifically. Cool, you can have a very cordial relationship. You can pass them out meetings. But I think only an account executive can rub an SDR's back. I don't think an SDR should rub an account executive's back in return if they can work with multiple different account executives at the same time. Because favoritism now becomes introduced into this equation. And now that's unfair for an SDR that perhaps wasn't able to give something to the SDR in return. And again, you might say, all right, well, that's the fault of the account executive. Why didn't he self-prospect and bring meetings to the SDR to get bookings for? But it just becomes a very, very muddy issue where, all right, I've rubbed your back, giving you a couple meetings so that way you can log them in and take credit for them and get paid for them. And now I'm expecting something in return. And what if you weren't able to bring me back something in return? I'm going to start resenting you. Or if you do bring me back something in return by booking me very high quality meetings and neglect the other account executives that you might be booking for as well, now they'll resent you too. And then that becomes more drama, more issues, more problems that are going to be presented.
Possibly. I definitely see where you're coming from. That is a very, like there is a high chance of that happening. And I think it's important to note now that different organizations operate differently. So for example, in Hassan's company, an SDR works with multiple different account executives, right?
Correct, yeah.
But in my current company, me as a BDR, I only get to work with 2 account executives. So it's not like I have so much power into favoriting one person over the other, because I'm given like, here's 250 from account executive A, and here's 250 accounts from account executive B, and you're prospecting into these. So I don't almost have that much power into being choosing someone as a favorite.
But what if, because account executive A is giving you those 2 free meetings, now you're going to emphasize more on working on their named accounts rather than account executive B because they rubbed your back?
A definite possibility. 100% that could happen.
You see what I'm saying? So this was where the conflict of interest is, where as an account executive, you're also trying to get the validation of the SDRs and have them on your good side because of that.
Absolutely.
And that's why I dislike that so much, because that's yet another factor that you need to keep in mind doing your job, because other people might be, buttering up this SDR so that they can take care of them, which is just super, super annoying to constantly have looking over your shoulder about.
But Hassan, we're in sales. We're always buttering up. But why? They were selling themselves to me when they gave me that 2 meetings anyways.
But why should I have that as yet another responsibility that I'm doing day to day that I shouldn't be doing?
I don't think it's a responsibility. Like, I'm always going to be working my hardest. I get it. Not everyone has that same mentality as me, but they're selling themselves. I respect it. Like, I would do the same.
I've given numerous free meetings to SDRs, right? But not under the notion of rubbing their backs. As a matter of fact, I've kind of done it round robin, where it's like I've given this person one, I'll give the other person one, and I'm not expecting any return. And I know for a fact that our system is set up in a way that they can't favor anybody. I'm sure there is some loopholes that somebody can take. If you love somebody so dearly and you want to return the favor so much, I'm sure there's always some way you can go about it. But I'm not sure if anybody actually goes to the trouble of doing that for me. And I'm not expecting that either when I'm giving out free meetings to people that they can put in their names.
But regardless, Hassan, humans are humans. We're always going to have a favorite. You're always going to like one person.
I do have favorites.
Like, the only solution I can think of now of the problem that you're raising is if you have a company which is like, okay, we're going to do a one-to-one model where one BDR works with one account executive only. And that is the case.
That is the case in upper segments. In enterprise, strat, they put them in a potted system where, all right, this is exactly who you're going to be working with, and it's your responsibility to train them. And even if you butter them up, it's benefiting both of you guys. But in ways where it's rolling up to multiple account executives, it's just, that's where I stand on this. And maybe we won't ever agree. Maybe it's better to agree to disagree on this topic, but I just see this as such a weird thing within the business that if an organization can solve that as much and make it as fair as possible and put a lot of rules of engagement around it, it's better than opening that can of worms and letting it foster within an organization.
No, I definitely feel you. Like, there are so many problems that can arise from that. But just my perspective is favoritism is always bound to happen, and we're in sales. So the account executive selling themselves to the BDR, I find it as gray area as it might be, it's just appropriate for the role, and vice versa. If a SDR is trying to sell themselves to the AE, well, hell yeah, like you're selling every day. Why not sell yourself too? Why not sell yourself for success in your company? But we can move on from this. I feel like, yeah, it's better to agree or disagree. I don't even think there's like anything to agree or disagree on. It's just a situation that's bound to happen regardless when you're using that model, whether it's the grouped model or the like working with.
Fun fact, in my organization, now it's changing a little bit, but it was that you can't have an SDR team and an AE team in the same office. They have to be in different offices because the whole buttering and favoritism and friendship might actually happen, and even more so in person, where there is no track record or log of the conversation that are happening on Teams or Slack. You can kind of go to the side. Hey, can you put this in my name? Can you book this meeting for me? Can you do this? Right? So for the longest time ever, they try to separate the departments so that way that doesn't happen. But now it's just, when an organization is growing fast, it's hard for that to take place. So yeah, we're shifting away from that model. We're hopefully hiring more SDRs in our organization too.
No, that's a smart model, and it removes that thing we're talking about. Like then they won't be best buddies, and they won't just be booking meetings for their friends and ignoring the other account executives that they're working with. Another topic I wanted to touch on is it's interesting. It's like the use of language sometimes, or the communication between SDRs and account executives. Do you feel like sometimes account executives can look at BDRs and just think of them as they're my assistant, so I can kind of talk down on them?
Some account executives do feel that way. I think a lot of them feel that, oh yeah, they're there to be my assistant for the time being until they get promoted. So I'll take advantage of the fact that they're there for now and kind of coach them and say that, have that higher complexity that, oh, I'm better than them, right? So that is very prominent. Sometimes it just becomes subconscious. You just feel like, well, I was there at some point and I'm here now. I've got promoted to get to my role. So I was talked to down the same way that I'm probably going to be talking down on these new current SDRs, right? I don't like doing that just because I don't want to have that whole hierarchy system going on. I feel respect is owed to everybody.
Because I haven't personally experienced it, but I have very good friends of mine that I work with that are BDRs that will get really upset sometimes about the use of language that an account executive will use to talk to them. Whether that be like literally just treating them like, this guy's straight up my assistant, and I can tell them, hey, this was such a shit meeting, and they'll use language like that. And I feel like that creates a lot of animosity between one party towards the other. And that's where the relationship can really just like completely fumble.
But see, that is an example of a very idiotic account executive. Because why the hell are you rubbing the person who books you the meeting the wrong way? Because like that's a way separate spectrum of the favoritism we were just speaking about. Because now it's like, okay, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Because you're building an animosity on this person, with this person. And he's really the reason why you're getting your meetings. That's dumb. Why would you do that?
Yeah, but some people just, I don't know, they get so caught up into, oh, I'm an account executive now, I'm so important, I have such a hierarchy over this other person. So I can tell them when they're not doing a good job and talk to them in a way that might be very disrespectful.
Yeah. So I can understand if sales managers are talking to their account executives in a very degrading manner, right? Because in the end of the day, there is not conflict of interest there. Like they're
the opposite. They're looking out for your best interest.
Exactly. They're, same way with SDR managers talking down with their SDRs. But I don't get it where there's a conflict of interest and you're talking down on the other person. Like that doesn't make sense.
No, it's so stupid. But I've seen it so many times, and I've only been on the floor for a couple months now. But it's crazy sometimes the way account executives will just really feel their own hype and almost neglect building a good relationship with their BDRs.
Yeah, because closing deals and closing difficult deals sometimes builds a lot of ego. that if you can't control, it's gonna really skyrocket and it's gonna spiral out of control. Like you become an egotistical maniac that's just like, oh yeah, I closed these deals. I recognize these logos. These logos are the ones I brought in. Oh, do you know, let's say, for example, this account or that company that you go shop at every day? Yeah, that was me who closed it, right? So it becomes a very egotistical world where, I'm not only just talking down to SDRs, I'm talking down to everybody that's not at my level. And that's where you really need to tame yourself and just ground yourself and say, like, other greater people have done the exact same.
If you haven't closed $5 million, don't talk to me.
Yeah, exactly. But I think now to switch this conversation on a more positive note and kind of wrap up this podcast, what, from your perspective as an SDR, how can I as an account executive be a good account executive to you as an SDR?
For me personally, I feel like feedback and like really good feedback is one way to go for having a very great partnership between both an SDR and account executive. And I'm talking in the sense of like, all right, I booked you this one meeting. Tell me why it was good, so then I can book you more like it. And if it was bad, tell me why it was bad, so I can book less like it. And that's really important. That's one aspect. A second aspect is like territory management. I don't know what the case is like in other companies, but for example, in my companies, I share a territory between them. So they have, let's say, 500 accounts that one account executive. I own 250 of them. Those are shared between us, and they own 250, the other 250 just by themselves. So us having our one-on-ones where we go like, all right, Sherif, let's target X and Y and Z company because their contract is running up with our competitors. So let's go for it this week. I really love that. It's like, all right, like I'm hungry to like us having signed deals because A, I benefit from it, and B, that's your goal at the end of the day. Give me some tips as to like who I should be targeting for this week. Give me some tips for how last week's meetings went, things like that. I think to sum it all up, feedback and positive communication between both parties. And a sense
of direction leading you in a way where you guys both benefit.
We're both aligned. Exactly. I think if you can communicate, like I'm always communicating with my account executives throughout the day. I'm always texting them, telling them about like, oh, I just had a good call with someone from here. I just had a back call with someone from here. Do you think you can perhaps tell me who else I should reach out to? That constant positive communication where we're both aligned on trying to sign deals for our company is the most important thing for us to just be on the same page most of the time.
And I will also say and add to that too, that my calendar as an account executive is very limited. I have 40 hours of my week available for you to book meetings on. And let's just take and trim it down to maybe 35 after my internal meetings, and then maybe trim it down for another 5 hours for lunches that I need to take. So really I have 30 hours that I can actually meet customers with. And then maybe trim it another 5 hours with the follow-ups of previous customers that I'm constantly talking with in the sales cycle. So you have 25 hours on my calendar that you own. If you book shit meetings on my calendar, that means you're losing out on the opportunities of me utilizing this time in your favor so that you get paid. So that's why me educating him about what looks good and what looks bad is good, because now he can time manage that 25 hours of my week in his favor, that he can put all the best accounts and the best meetings he's booked on there and leave out the ones that are perhaps not going to yield him the outcome that he's looking for. So that's why that is very important to educate the SDRs in regards to what a good meeting looks like and what a bad meeting looks like, because I'm sure you wouldn't want to book bad meetings. You're going to take up more of the time slots that I have and not get anything back.
Yeah, and it takes time. Like first month, for example, I booked so many meetings, but I can agree now looking back, some of them were bad. Like some of them I wouldn't go after these people anymore. But I think it's important, especially for like really like fresh graduates and people that are first 1 to 2 years in sales, is having an account executive that is willing to be patient with them in their first couple months so they can know what a good and bad meeting is. Now to flip the question, Hassan, how can an SDR be a good SDR for you as an account executive?
I would say this is the first thing that jumps to me. And it's actually being nice, right? Because if you're that pesky SDR that is constantly knocking on my door, asking me for updates, asking me for how things have went, things like that, well, sure, it shows hunger and dedication, but it might also come across as just annoying, right? I work with a couple SDRs that are so nice, super nice, that to the point where if they've messed up, they'll come to me and apologize and say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to waste your time. It's like, you know, I take your word for it. I trust your expertise. I know you're doing your best job and it didn't work out. So I'm sorry that I booked such a bad meeting. Sometimes I feel bad for I'm like, oh, was there anything left for me to do? Like, I feel like, I owe it to them. Maybe there's something that I should have done that I couldn't do, or I try to reverse engineer it.
Not to toot my own horn, but I do that too.
Yeah, right. You feel bad because they're so nice and willing to learn and wanting to take your advice and things. And that is such a great trait to have as an SDR working with an account executive. Versus on the flip side, where you have a very entitled, pesky, annoying SDR that thinks you're not doing your job right. You can see the difference there. And that's why being a nice, respectful, willing to learn SDR goes such a long way, not just from a perspective of working well with the AE, but also from a perspective of getting those branding points that now as an AE, I might vouch for you to get promoted. As much as I like working with you, my manager is potentially your future manager. You're going to be joining my team if you get promoted. So if I like you, I'm going to put a good word in for you. And people a lot of that times forget about that. So being nice to me is good for you in the long run.
And being caring.
Like
caring about your sales cycle, caring about your time, because ultimately that's what they're booking into. No, it's definitely very important.
Yeah. So that's one way I would say. And I guess I've gone ahead of myself and said willingness to learn, because that's another one that is also very important. I think deserves a point on its own, where you caring enough to know where it went wrong and not doing that mistake again. That's such a good trait to have as an SDR. And being very open in communication, talking to me, asking me, hey, I have this meeting booked, or I have this customer on the line, or I'm in active conversations with this customer over email. This is their situation. Do you think it's worth your time for me to book it, or what is your thoughts on this? That's perfect. You're presenting me with the case, and I can say yes or no. We both save each other time. You retain more of the hours that you have in my week to book on. And I can perhaps increase the chances and likelihood of me converting this opportunity for you, and you get paid. It's win-win.
And it turns into a perfect partnership.
Exactly.
Because I see there is so much potential for SDRs and AEs to be successful together. Of course, there's that conflict of interest that we yapped about for so long. But if they actually just align on the same goals, it really becomes like such a good duo. I'm enjoying working with the account executives that I'm working with right now, because we see eye to eye on so many issues. I respect their time, and I respect the fact that their main objective is to close deals, and I want to help them close deals. And we like that partnership almost becomes a friendship sometimes, where we're sharing our successes on a day-to-day basis. We're sharing where things might have gone bad, and there's like a lot of empathy between us. It's like when
empathy. That is a great word to use here. You need to be empathetic the same way as an account executive is to be empathetic towards an SDR and their goals. I think empathy here is a must in this relationship.
No, totally agreed. There is so much potential for things to go wrong, but there is an immense amount of potential as well for things to go right. And when they go right, you feel like you enjoy work a lot more. Like I enjoy working with account executives that I'm working with now, because we have such a good relationship, and it's like, all right, we're a team. Like let's go together and hunt those deals and close those deals together.
Yeah, and I mean, I can go in the more technical side of things, but I've refrained from doing that. Of course, follow-ups, staying on top of your book of business and the accounts you're working, things like that. But I feel like that's very public knowledge in terms of that's the stuff that your SDR managers are telling you to do, and it's different from company to company. Organizations have different workflows around that. So if you guys want us to go into more depth in regard to the technicality of what makes a good SDR in terms of a day-to-day jobs, we're happy to delve into that. but we wanted to keep it more about the working relationship than it is on what to do for the account executive to be a good SDR. So on this note, I think we've had such a great episode. I feel like these points are going to resonate with a lot of you. And if they don't, please let us know. We'd love to hear your opinions and your thoughts about what we've discussed today, and perhaps any experiences you've had or any stories you'd like to share with us. We're more than open to kind of hearing them. And perhaps in another session, we can read, either success stories or horrible stories and kind of react to them on the podcast. I think that would be a very fun episode. But if you guys are willing to share, we're willing to hear and listen to you guys. So appreciate you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you guys for listening. Like Hassan said, please leave a comment and tell us perhaps where we went wrong, or if you disagree with us. We love those. We encourage those. Make sure you follow us on all our social media. So we have accounts on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, TikTok. If you guys can follow us, Spotify. If you guys can just support us on there, it would really help us out a lot. But thank you, Hassan, for this conversation. It was so useful.